Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I'm your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host and special guest, Franco Burrows. Franco, what's going down, brother?
It's all happening here. I'm in London. It's the weekend. Who knows what can happen?
I'm sure I will get stories later, come Monday or Sunday. We shall see. Well, Franco, one of the things we talked about in the last podcast. So, guys, if you haven't listened to the last podcast, what we talked about was when your wife's friends essentially become a problem in your marriage, right? It happens so commonly to a lot of the men that we speak to. But something else that happens quite often, and then men don't find about till it's too late, is when your wife's male friends become a problem. So, Franco, talk to me a little bit about what you're hearing from the guys.
Yeah, what we're hearing from the guys is that there a lot of uncertainty about whether, I think I said this on the other podcast we did, about where the line is. It's like, are these people coming into my life and affecting my relationship? Are they having a good impact on it? Are they not having a good impact? Are they a threat to the relationship? Are they not? Can a man and a woman really have a genuine friendship or not? I think it's not a clear cut question. Would you agree?
I think the question's good. The answer, yeah. I mean, they've done a whole movie on this. When Harry Met Sally is a classic movie that gets referenced. Billy Crystal, showing our age here, but most of the guys listening to this are about the same ballpark. Can a man and a woman maintain a relationship that is just friendship, whereas neither of them wants to have sex with the other one? I do not believe that is possible over a long term. I believe it's possible for men and women to be friends and sex not to happen, and for the man or the woman not to make an overt pass at the person, right? Because this happens in the workplace a lot.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's not there without the temptation or desire at one point or another.
Yeah, you get in the workplace, what do they call it? The work husband.
Yeah.
Where these women have got like their chosen man that they hang around with, and I don't know, whatever they get up to in work. And then you've got I actually put this out on my Facebook page the other day. Can a man and a woman be best friends without having sex? And all the women were like, yeah, of course you can. Yeah, of course you can. And some of the men were like, nah, you can't. It's sex just gets in the way, So I think with a lot of women genuinely believe that when they say that, I think a lot of them are genuine. There was one girl that came on and she said, yeah, I mean, like, this sex doesn't get in the way with any of my male friends. She said, but thinking about it, they are all ugly. Like, you've just given the game away there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've noticed there are women who genuinely don't realize that they've got a guy in the friend zone. I'm talking about single women now and single guys. They don't realize he's in the friend zone. He's trying to get with her, but he's trying to do it in a nice guy sort of way.
Yep.
Thinking that one day she'll just realize what a great guy he is. Yeah. So you've got that going on where she just thinks, oh, he's such a, and I've literally had friends who've done that. That like they will have women phoning them up to fix their car, and they'll be there like a shot. They'll do this and they'll do that, and they hang around as friends, but then really what it boils down to is they want to be together.
Yeah, very common.
Yeah, and to be fair, I did that when I was like a teenager. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just trying different things, isn't it? But I think when it comes to serious relationships, it is a problem for a lot of men, where they don't know where to draw the line. Okay. Something that for guys to think about is that there's been studies done which have shown that I think it's 40 to 50% of women have a backup guy. So if it doesn't work out, we do work with a lot of men. Like, not everybody comes to us where they're on the verge of divorce. Some just want to live their best life in all areas, including their marriage, including their business, including their health, wealth, and everything else. But we know through dealing with thousands and thousands of relationships that when a woman is about to, when she brings up the word divorce, she's been thinking about it for quite some time.
Yeah.
Okay. And that kind of stacks up with this study, which is showing that half of women roughly have got a backup guy.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised, Franco, if it was a lot more than that. Because again, I keep saying this, but I feel like I have the inside scoop. And not that my wife tells me names and things, but I'll ask her questions because she's been coaching women for so long. And I know a lot of other coaches that the majority of women have a guy they have their eye on, right? If their needs are not getting met in their marriage, which has got to be 90% of women, that aren't dealing with a guy that's coming through our program. Not just to say that it's just my experience, really. Their needs are not being met. They're looking elsewhere, right? And it could be a fantasy guy or a guy at the coffee shop, or a lot of times it tends to be, an old boyfriend hitting them up, or a coworker, somebody in their circle of influence, right? So proximity is power. Most relationships start as a result of proximity. Look at your marriage. Guys, most of you guys married somebody who was around you, right? A coworker, somebody in the same field that you saw at conferences for business, somebody at your church, somebody at your high school, college, et cetera. It had to do with proximity, the area you were in, which makes logical sense.
Yeah.
A lot of times this happens with the women. And so, men coming through the program, they're very, once we go through the coaching program, they share what's going on. And we've got men who have found out through cloning phones, through breaking into their wife's social media, to hacking it, to hiring hackers to get in, to checking their phones, have found that their loving wife and their great marriage, there was a guy on the side, or a guy that they're talking to. An ex-boyfriend reached out, via Facebook, or something else was happening. And for some of these guys, and this may be some of you guys, if the relationship's rocky, there's a good, your wife's going to seek comfort somewhere. She's looking for that escape plan. And women initiate, I think it's 76% of the divorces or something like that, somewhere in the upper 70s% of all divorces. Divorce day is coming up, guys. There's a date in January. The lawyers know it. We've talked about in the podcast. Divorce day is happening. It's when most of the divorces are filed. It's a huge number. And what's happening is it catches most men by surprise. And some guys realize, okay, it's just a friend, right? It's just her friend that she mentions, the guy at the gym, right? Or whatever. I'm going to tell you, the guy at the gym probably knows your marriage is rocky too. And there's a good chance, as a man that used to own a gym, and I used to see this play out, not in my gym, but just being in that area, there are a lot of sharks in those waters. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people who probably don't value the sanctity of marriage. Or maybe it's another man who his marriage is rocky. Your wife and your marriage are rocky, and these two people come together. And that's why you see it so commonly. It's, I knew him. He was a friend. Or they find out, oh, it's just my wife's friend from college. They've been buddies for so long. Well, why? Why is he continuing to invest in your wife? Why is this guy continuously reaching out to your wife? What needs of his are getting met through their friendship? Mm. Right? Yeah. What needs of hers are getting met? And what's the future prognosis here?
What's on my mind would be good to get clear on for all of us, really, is what do you think is, because I can definitely think of women I've known, not many to be fair, but women that have been part of my life that I would consider friends, yep. That I consider they're in my corner, So what do you think is healthy sort of male to female friendship, and what's not?
It's a great question. Yeah. It's a great question. I'll kind of throw it back to it all comes down to boundaries, right? Mm. And clarity. So I have female friends, a woman who's worked with me for a decade, Darcy, who I consider her a friend. She's over at my house twice a week. My wife's not here, right? And just to set the scene even more grotesquely, I have a 1,300 square foot room here. There's a bedroom attached to it, et cetera. There's all kinds of things that could happen. There's boundaries. We talk about my marriage, but I talk about the highlights of my marriage, right? I think where it gets unhealthy is when men turn to their female friends to complain about their wives or vice versa, right? I think that is a big mistake. I think it's the known intent of the relationship is also very important. And that's important in every relationship, in my opinion. I have gay friends, I have straight friends, gay friends, women, etc., men. So for me, it's what's the intentionality? Do they know my direction? Right. As you know, I'm a very like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going this way. And, if you don't want to come, that's cool. But if you want to, let's go have some fun. And so I'm very clear with my female friends that my marriage comes first. My wife is my number one woman, even when we're going through hard times and tough times. And look, these women know that I'm going through a tough time. They're not dumb. Right. But I also make sure for most of these women, right, that they're friends with my wife. I can tell you transparently that when when our relationship was going rough early on, I didn't, right? I had female friends that I didn't talk positively about my wife and our marriage, right? I was looking for a backup plan, consciously or subconsciously. And I think women do the same. I think if you want to make your marriage, if you're saying your marriage is really important to you, right? If that's the key, you're like, hey, look, when I look back, that rocking chair test, I'm sitting on the rocking chair and I'm 80 and I want to be with this woman that I'm with now. And I want to grow with this woman, this one person through this game we call life. Then you got to burn the boats, man. You got to make sure that those other girls you're hanging out with and make sure the guys your wife's hanging out with know that's the case.
I agree.
And we call it, I'll keep babbling about this, Franco, because you got me on coffee. You look at this and there's things in life, and here's an analogy I use, and I know it doesn't apply to everybody, but I've talked to you about this. I've used this example in the past, right? You can go get smashed with the guys tonight in London, right? You can have a great time meeting women, have more drinks than Franco normally has. You end up back at a woman's house, right? She's beautiful. Maybe she's got a couple of her girlfriends. Things are getting great. And someone lays out heroin on the table, a couple needles and some heroin. You're drunk. Are you going to do it? It's a hell no, right? It's just
done today, these days.
Yeah.
2 drinks is for me. I'm just like, no, that's
but you get the idea, right? Yeah. For some people, you could say, if you get drunk out of your mind, I tell you to jump off the roof into a pool. Some guys are like, well, maybe if I was drunk enough, I might do it, right? Because the door's open. There's a consideration there. If I laid heroin on the table for most people, they're going to be like, no, I don't care how drunk I am. I'm not doing it. It's so ingrained in me as an absolute no-go.
Yeah.
That I don't care how drunk I am. I just know even in that state of mind, I would pass. Even if I was blackout drunk, I wouldn't do it. This is where you look into also sexuality in your friendships. You need to make it at that level and make sure your wife's making it at that level. I think we're getting maybe a little off topic here to where we wanted to go, but that's the critical driver, right? If it's not the heroin in your life, like you're not going to cheat as being the heroin, and your wife is the same thing, then you got the door open.
I think it's a really good metaphor and a good analogy. For a lot of guys, and I was in this category myself, and I think I've said this before. One of the reasons why guys, there's a number of reasons why men don't, and you can add some in there as well, don't put the boundaries in place. I think the first one is fear that they're going to be coming across as jealous.
Yep.
Okay. And it's like, I said before, there was a guy in the group said, and he's a conscientious man. He's obviously doing some reading on different things. And he said, how can we evolve as men so that we're not so territorial, And I was like, well, if I'm in a committed relationship, I don't want anyone banging my missus. Territorial, then I'm territorial, So I think that's what a lot of women struggle to understand as well is that we are territorial. I mean, like if you look at young boys, for example, when my parents split up, and she brought a man into the house when I was 14 or 15, I was like, who the fuck are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas women will take that man as more at face value. It's like, oh, he seems like a nice guy or whatever. I'm just like, he's not my dad. Get up. So we are territorial like that, and that applies in relationships as well. And we don't want to be. It comes down to what women have their own drives. That they're wired to be a certain way over thousands and hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years. And men are too. And one of our drives is not to be invested into a relationship where, she would potentially, from an evolutionary point of view, bringing up someone else's kids, So it's there for a reason. And I would say, in a lot of cases, your instincts are going to be right. But it's a matter of owning it and not feeling guilty about it and not being shamed about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you. If you're looking at this, guys, we're coming back to, so you say he's just a friend, right? It's that old Bismarcky song. If your wife has got friends, sit her down, and talk to them, go, hey, I know, first of all, do you have a lot of male friends? You got to approach this in maybe a different way, guys, and figure it out. But one thing my wife and I have talked about openly is, and we have, I guess it'd be more of an agreement. We've talked about it at times when my wife's been jealous or something like that. Cause I'm still involved, in the gym lifestyle, so to speak. So, and my wife is from that lifestyle too. So she knows it well. I mean, that's the first place people go when they're getting ready to exit a relationship because they want to look sexy again before they go on the market.
It's a very sexually charged place.
Oh yeah, man. Come on. Everybody's sweating. They're groaning. They're doing all kinds of things. I love it. I'm going there after this podcast. So, when you think about it, are you saying anything or having conversations that basically that disrespect the sanctity of our marriage? Right. We look at this as three entities, my wife and I, right? I have my life. She has her life. And the third entity is our marriage, our relationship. So we don't do anything to violate that third entity. So one way to look at this would be to think and ask your wife, and you guys, you think about it too, if you're doing it. Are there any messages or things you're saying that if typed up were put in the newspaper that you would be embarrassed because they would reflect poorly on your marriage? If the answer is yes, you're bitching about your wife or whatever to your buddies or to another woman in particular, but your wife is doing this, that's an issue. There's a lot of guys. I mean, we get to see a disproportionate number, obviously, but we see tons of men that come in because they found out that they weren't meeting the emotional needs of their partner. And there was another guy there in the waiting. Right. And to your point, when we started, Franco, I think you said the study found 40% of women admitted to having a backup man. I got to imagine that number is a lot higher. I think when you get into areas of relationships,
women have admitted it.
Women have admitted it. And then you go towards marriages, when are you asking? If marriages have gone stagnant, that's when it becomes easier for her to start looking.
This is where, we go into one of the reasons why men struggle so much with breakup, in my opinion, is because for a woman, even an average looking woman, let's be fair, as soon as the relationship is done, or even when it's not done, she's got options everywhere. She's only got to get up, put a bit of makeup on, go to work. She's got men throwing themselves at her. She's got guys in the inbox, in the DMs in Facebook, and everywhere she goes is like there's an option. But for a man, those options, even for a relatively attractive man, that's the nature of it, isn't it? We have to hunt, and men are the hunters, women are the hunted. So it's that dynamic there as well, which is it's not a level playing field from that point of view. That doesn't mean to say that men don't go out and hunt even when they're in committed relationships, and that's wrong in a lot of cases. But you see where I'm coming from there?
No, I definitely do. And so your woman is going to have a lot more options. And where we see this falter most guys, when you see, the male friends, is you want to sit down with your partner and have a conversation about it. What is the intention here, with this friendship? I would make sure I got to know these guys, not from a jealousy standpoint, but I do the same with my kids' friends, right? Because I want to know the people who are my people I love are spending time with, right? I'm naturally very protective. I won't say jealous because that's not the natural state for me, but protective for sure. And I want to make sure everybody's safe and everything's going well. And if my marriage, if I'm in a marriage when I've been in this one, where my wife and I feel more like roommates, then there's something going to be exciting her. And I say this, it seems like every podcast now, but 50 Shades of Grey, right? How many hundreds of millions of copies of that book have sold? If that doesn't open your eyes, guys, that women are way freakier than you probably think they are and are looking for a man to fill their fantasies, hundreds of millions, not just a few, right? It's a lot more than you think. And if things are going wrong, there's a good chance your wife's needs are getting met. If a guy reaches out to her, it just happens to be convenient in that moment. She responds and it starts to escalate. And that escalation starts to be pictures sent. Hey, here's a picture of me at the gym. Send me one of you at the gym. Then the pictures escalate from there. Here's a picture of me naked. Send me one of you, etc. And we've seen this time and time again where the wife's going away for a weekend, and the weekend away for business or with the girls is really a weekend to meet this guy. And unfortunately, gentlemen, you're listening to this, we hear it a lot. And guys, there's a guy that posted who's going through the activation method right now, posted an amazing clean slate letter for the other guys to review, but talks about his wife sought comfort in another man. And this guy, kudos to him because he took ownership of it. Like, woof, that was an amazing ability. So hats off to that gentleman. But guys, I mean, this is time to double down on you and work on yourself. Because here's something else I could tell you, Franco. It's like investing, right? Stocks. I don't know why I always think of this, but let's say you're dating a girl right now. Franco's dating a woman. Things are good. If Franco's stock is continuously going up, which I know it is, because Franco's always investing in his growth, she's not going to look anywhere else, right? She is on the rising stock train, right? She has hit the crypto that is going to go hockey stick growth. Your wife's looking for that. When she married you, she expected a growth continuum. And you did too. Us guys get a little more complacent though, sometimes. But this is why the guys going through the activation method start to turn things around. If you're investing in yourself, you're making your marriage exciting, it's fun, it's fulfilling, and you're exciting and fun, right? You've discovered fun again in your life, right, guys? A lot of guys lost that. I heard somebody I know, I just bought a basketball, Franco. I know another guy I heard through the rumor mill bought a basketball recently.
Yeah.
But to have a little bit more fun in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Then those guys, when they enter in the DMs, your wife's going to delete them and ignore them.
Yeah. It's hypergamy, isn't it? It's like women will, if men are going to cheat, it's like, even if we're really happy, that drive is still, I'm not saying we will act on it. I mean, I've definitely had periods where I've been totally in love and I'm not even thinking about other women. Okay. So it does happen for men, but I would also say that for men, it's the variety drive, isn't it? It's to just spread our seeds almost indiscriminately,
Yeah.
And for women, they want the best. And that's the drive. It's like, if they're getting the best from one man, they won't look anywhere. And that's the real difference. I'll tell you another thing that's just come to my mind as to why men don't put these boundaries in place. And it relates to this clean slate, actually, is resentment. If there's a big chasm in the relationship, and I can relate to that, and I see it in a lot of the men, it's like, this relationship is broken and she's off connecting and doing different things. We had one guy and his wife was going off for a massage, with her girlfriends. And sometimes it was like guys doing the massage, and it's like, this is a woman who is not allowing him to give his wife a massage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and I definitely had it in the main relationship I had, with the long-term relationship I had. She started like going out for lunch with male colleagues and stuff like that. But I just didn't know I knew it was an issue, but I didn't. And I knew I would have known how to say, look, this isn't happening. But because of the chasm, in the relationship. That was the issue. I didn't know how to fix that.
Yep.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the triadic connection comes in, because it's like, it's all very well standing up and saying, these are my boundaries. But if you've lost her heart, or if she's lost your heart, I know for me, it actually started when she hurt me, and I didn't know how to fix that. So instead of getting it on the table, I just didn't have the tools at the time to sort it out. She actually, looking back, she hurt me a lot. So then instead of me being a grown up about it and addressing it head on, I was like, well, she's going to do that. I'm just going to do that, you know? And I find a lot of couples do that. It becomes tit for tat. It's like, oh, well, if he's going to do this, I'm going to slide off and do that. And we're both going to stay within a certain level of respectability. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm going to have my little bit of cake there. It's nothing bad. It's like you say, if it was made public, it would be like, no, there's nothing really going on there. But we both know deep down there is. You know what I mean? There's enough to be a sign of there's a chasm there in the relationship. And so I would say that's as well as just the shame that a lot of men take on from other people in an unhealthy way, to say, well, actually, there's nothing. We all get jealous, right? And there's boundaries. Jealousy is there for a reason. Actually, it's there to protect us. It's there to, just like fear. It's an emotion that's there to say, well, what needs to be addressed here? Yeah. And sometimes there's nothing to be addressed. We just got to deal with it. But then the other side of the coin is that it's a sign, if someone's overstepping a boundary, that where is the connection broken here?
Yeah.
Because when we fix that, then it's going to be much easier to put these boundaries in place and to get on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, the cycle I see men on, guys listening to this, maybe you can relate, is you get that chasm, you grow apart, then men get angry, hold it in, and then they let that anger out, yelling, screaming, whatever. And usually it's not too bad. They erupt, but then they feel guilt, and then they feel guilty about what they did or what they didn't do. Then they get shame around that, and that shame turns into depression, and that depression causes them to push away. Right? They close down emotionally from their wives. And so when you think about this, guys, think about scales, 2 scales, right? The balance beam scales, you had in chemistry or whatever, or the justice, truth and justice, good and evil on one side, good on one side, evil on the other. When you first got married, all you had were good vibes and good experiences, right? So that scale tipped it. You could fart in front of her and it'd be a joke, or she pretended it didn't happen. No big deal. She could do something that would just really, upset you. But if she did it back then, it was no big deal, because you had so many good emotions and good experiences. The scales were tipped in your favor. Over time, you start to have these little things add up, and this guilt, the shame, and the scales start to tip the other way. Now you're having more arguments. There's more resentment and more negative feelings. And now you're in a hole it's hard to get out of. And it's during this time that we see that these male friends start to come in. They start to become more prevalent in women's relationships and what have you. It's because the scales have tipped the other way, and there's more negative experiences. There's more negative feelings in the marriage than there are positive ones. And the way to get around this, is Franco touched on this earlier, that we've developed, and we've seen it work for hundreds of men. The first thing is the triadic connection. And so the triadic connection, for those that aren't familiar with it, you have 3 portions. Think of a triangle. At the base of the triangle, you got the clean slate method, right? That retakes the scales to neutral. Now you're operating at neutral scales. So now you have some things to do. And from there, we have the hidden motives technique, which allows you to now start adding on those good emotions again, those good experiences. You're now in a great place where the scales start tipping in your balance. This is where we see these other guys start to disappear and marriages start to come back. And then to make sure it lasts, the key portion of this triangle, the third side, is the live like a king system. And that allows us to continue and create this perpetual wheel that allows you to keep adding to those good vibes, those good experiences. And now the scales are back to where you first started dating and first got married. And it's at that place, right, Franco, that the other guys vanish, because hypergamy kicks in, your stock starts to rise. And a lot of these guys, the activation method is short. It's only 2 months, right? But it happens that quickly when the guys have these new tools in their tool belt.
Because that's all, whether it's a short, you just get into a relationship, or whether you have a long-term relationship, married for 10, 20 years, there can only be two things: connection and polarity. And the leadership side of it covers the polarity, but none of those are going to operate if there's just too much resentment or hurt that's built up. So you got to get that out of the way first. And then the magic just happens, doesn't it? We see it time and time again. How I don't want to say easy, because the men have to put some work in for me. It's uncomfortable sometimes to put the work in to fully activate yourself as a man. But when you've done the work, it's, one thing I would say, because we were going to talk about green flags at one point, but when I hear people say, marriage is hard work, it's like, no, not the ones we see, not the great marriages we see. Yeah, life can be hard. Okay, life can be really hard at times, but great relationships are not hard work. Not when you have these foundations in place.
Yeah, it's like, building. I recently built something for my kids in the backyard playset, right? And if I would have, instead of using a mallet, right, to hammer in something, if I would have walked out there with a spatula, the wrong tool, this is impossible to build, I'd be yelling and screaming. Guys, we just don't have the tools. I didn't have them when I was going through the original problems in my marriage. They didn't exist out there. Tried therapy. Yeah, that made things worse. I walked out of there every therapy session. My wife and I hated each other more. I was like, we were supposed to go to dinner. No way am I going to dinner with you. We just didn't have the tools. And it's like building this play area out in my backyard. If I don't have the right tools to build it, I'm going to say it's impossible to do. It's too difficult. But if I have the tools necessary, which I did, I put it up in a matter of a few hours, right? Rather than a few days. And so having the tools shortens the gap of time, right? Which is more important. And it also makes it easy to get into as we go through them. So Franco, let's summarize this up. Let's give the guys a couple action steps they can take today if they're finding themselves in a situation where, you know what? My wife does have some guy friends that I'm not so sure about. What can they do?
Just get it on the table. Be clear on what your boundaries are. Got to be really clear. And something, you don't have to be, if you're at the beginning of a relationship, you can just maybe tell a story about, maybe why you ended another relationship because of this, that, or the other, that that boundary was crossed, and then she will know. Okay. If you're into a long-term relationship, there's no hiding place. You just got to get it on the table and say, look, even if this has been going on and I've accepted it up to now, it stops today. There's, with boundaries, what I found with a lot of the guys is they want an easy way to establish a boundary. And it's like, no, you got to be able to walk through the fire. You don't get the benefits and the rewards without the uncomfortable conversations and the pushback from her, maybe. But you've got to be prepared to walk, literally stand on what you believe in. And if that means the relationship ends, if your boundaries are violated, the relationship ends. That's how important they are.
Laws like gravity.
Yeah. And then I think this business of, if there is a disconnect between, with her overstepping boundaries or you overstepping boundaries, it can be what I described, which is a lack of connection. So it can really highlight that there's a disconnect somewhere, and you get to fix that as well as put the boundaries in place, because otherwise you might not even get to put the boundary. She might not accept it, and you might not accept her boundaries. You've got to get the connection back working together, where you can be genuinely intimate together. And what does intimacy imply? It implies being open with each other, being seen by each other, and that includes what you really want, what you really don't want, what are your greatest hopes, dreams, fears, and frustrations.
Yeah, and guys, if you're having a hard time having that conversation, what you can do is you can send this podcast or if you're getting this on YouTube or wherever you are, send it to your wife and say, hey, I'd really like to get your thoughts on this. Right. And let that start the conversation if you need to. Now she's going to hear this part, or you can play part of it for her and say, hey, so I was listening to these two coaches. And this is what they were talking about that they're seeing. Right. This could be an easier entrance to it. Right. And I agree with you, Franco. You just need to lay the boundaries down, but you can do so in such a way where it doesn't sound dictatorial. Right. You're not like, this is the way it's going to be or I'm out. You have a conversation about it, and what I have found is oftentimes when I have the conversations around things like this, my wife hasn't considered it, right? She hasn't really even thought about it that much. And she's like, oh, I haven't thought of it that way. That's interesting. Or she's chosen not to think about it, whatever it may be. But it's an easy way to sit there and have this conversation, guys.
Yeah. Like we were talking about, just quickly, because I know we're running out of time, but it's the same with what we said about a lot of women don't realize what's going on. They just assume that, it's okay to be friendly with that guy because he doesn't want anything. He's not, he's just a nice guy, So sometimes they just need a bit of time for it to sink in.
Yeah. I can tell you when I got married, years after I got married, my wife and I were sitting around joking about things and we were listing off. So we owned and worked at a gym at the time. That was one of the businesses that I owned. My wife was one of the head strength coaches, right? So she was leading men and women. And we joke around. She's like, oh yeah, I knew that guy had a crush on me. Oh yeah, I knew that guy, So they know, right? A lot of times they know. And they may perpetuate it a little bit, right? Because it feels good. It feels good when people are flirting with you or complimenting you. But what you want to do is lay groundwork rules in your marriage or any relationship. Or what are the lanes, like bowling, right? What are the lanes where the bumpers where it's going to go in the gutter if you violate those lanes? And that's really important to do and really important to have those conversations.
Like that one. Yeah.
So gentlemen, if you want to, I'd love to hear what you guys think. And I'm sure Franco does too. Do you disagree with us? Can men and women be just friends and not want at any time in that relationship to be more than friends, not for it to go intimate or sexual? I'm curious what you think, guys. Go over to the Facebook group. There's a private group for business owners. Franco is in there quite often. I check in there as well as Tim and Arthur and Mark and all the other coaches that are involved and team. Go over there and let us know what you think. Put a comment below this video. There's going to be a video in there of this recording where Frank and I are having this conversation. And I want to know what you think. Also, if you've experienced this the other way, where you found your wife's got a friend who wants more, drop a comment in there and let us know what's going on there too. Guys, this is the time for you to get your hockey stick-like growth, invest in yourself, let your stock raise, and you'll watch all these other guys fall by the wayside. Gentlemen, as always, we appreciate you being here with us, and that's a wrap for us here at the Powerful Man Show.